Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really interesting source material today. Takes us way back, ancient teachings.
That's right. We're looking into commentaries on ancient texts, specifically a pretty compelling story involving the Buddha and some of his disciples.
And the core topic here is this story about a teacher and his students. Seems straightforward, but there's this situation. It reveals something really profound about leadership, and maybe even more about leading ourselves.
Exactly. It unpacks what happens when there's this, gap between what someone says and what they actually do. And it's all set during a specific time, a rainy season retreat.
Okay, so our mission here in this deep dive is really to get to the heart of this story, understand what happened, why it was such a big deal for them, and, well, what timeless insight it might offer you.
And the key takeaway, it really cuts to the core of integrity, effectiveness too, especially if you're influencing others. It highlights something often missed, how hard it is to train the toughest student, yourself.
Okay, let's unpack this story then. It revolves around a monk, Padhānikatissattheravatthu.
That's him. The source tells us he'd just gotten meditation instructions directly from the Buddha at Jetavana.
Ah, right, the famous monastery complex.
Exactly. So, armed with these instructions, he takes a group, 500 other monks, out into the forest with him.
And this was for the rainy season retreat, yeah. That period for really intensive practice.
A time set aside specifically for that kind of deep spiritual work and meditation.
So he gathers all these monks, these 500 monks, and he kind of lays down the law.
He does. He basically tells them, look, you got these instructions straight from the living Buddha. This is precious. So be diligent. Practice these ascetic duties carefully.
Ascetic duties. Those were the really rigorous practices, right? Aimed at discipline.
Yeah. Things like intense meditation, maybe restricted eating, staying awake longer. It was a call for serious effort. High commitment.
Sounds like a pretty clear instruction for a serious retreat.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets surprising, according to the source.
Right. Because after giving this instruction, be diligent, practice hard, what does Padhānikatissattheravatthu do? He goes off, lies down, and sleeps.
Wow. Okay. Bit of a contrast there.
A striking contrast. The commentary points it out immediately. Sets up the whole problem, really.
Absolutely. So meanwhile, what are the 500 monks doing? Are they following the instructions?
They are. They have a routine. Initially, they're doing walking meditation during the first watch of the night. That's like early evening.
Yeah.
Then they go to their lodgings in the middle watch.
And the source says they even adjusted that later.
Yeah, seems like they shifted to doing the walking meditation during the middle watch, so later at night, and then resting during the last watch, closer to dawn. They were definitely putting in the hours. Serious effort.
But the teacher's behavior, it kept interfering.
The text describes how Padhānikatissattheravatthu would wake up from his sleep, go over to where the monks were, and, basically scold them.
Scold them? For what? For practicing.
Well, he'd confront them, asking things like, did you just come here to lie down and sleep? Wait, he asked them that after he'd been sleeping.
Exactly. And then he tells them, quickly, go out and practice your ascetic duties. The hard stuff.
And the really frustrating part.
After telling them to practice, he just goes right back and sleeps again.
You're kidding me.
Nope. The source really emphasizes this wasn't a one-off thing. He did this constantly. It was a repeating cycle throughout the whole retreat.
Man, I can just imagine being one of those monks. You're trying so hard to focus. You've got instructions from the Buddha himself.
Right. You're putting in these long, difficult hours.
And your teacher, the guide, is acting completely the opposite way. And what's worse, actively disrupting your practice schedule.
And the impact.
Yeah.
The source makes it clear it was significant because of this constant interruption and maybe even more, the confusing example.
Yeah.
They just couldn't concentrate.
Their minds were scattered. Couldn't settle into the meditation.
Exactly. Recitation, meditation subjects.
Right.
None of it could take root properly. Their minds were just distracted, hindered.
So what did they do? Did they talk about it among themselves? They did. They started discussing it. And interestingly, at first, they apparently tried to rationalize it. Like maybe he's practicing some kind of super intense diligence we just can't see.
Giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. So they decided to observe him more closely.
And what did they see when they observed him?
Well, they saw exactly what was happening. Sleeping. Waking up to scold them. Going back to sleep.
Okay. So the observation didn't help his case.
Not at all. It led them to this pretty stark and, disheartening realization. The source uses strong words. They felt they were ruined or lost.
Wow.
And they concluded their teacher was just making empty noise.
Empty noise. That phrase just lands, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Instruction without the action behind it. Just noise.
It captures that lack of substance perfectly. And because of this major hindrance, this complete breakdown in credible guidance, the outcome was pretty sad.
No progress.
None. The source specifically notes that not one of those 500 monks managed to attain any special realization, any spiritual distinction during that entire retreat. They were effectively stuck.
So the retreat ends. What happens then? They go back.
Yep. The 500 monks return to the Buddha at Jetavana.
And the Buddha greets them, asks how the retreat went, I assume?
Standard practice. He greeted them and asked, did you practice diligently? Without negligence.
And that's when they told him everything.
Yeah.
About Padhānikatissattheravatthu.
They recounted the whole situation, laid out the entire frustrating story, the sleeping, the scolding, the hypocrisy, the disruption.
How did the Buddha react to that?
Well, he listened, and then he confirmed their experience. He basically said, yes, this monk did cause you trouble. He was a hindrance. And interestingly, he added not just now, but even in the past, hinting at past life connections.
Ah, okay. And to illustrate this pattern of causing trouble, that's when he told his story.
Exactly. When the monks asked for more context, he told them a Jataka tale, a past life story. This one was called the Akalar Vakukuta Jataka.
About a chicken crowing at the wrong time.
That's the one. We don't need to dive into the details of that specific story here, but the point was clearly about the trouble caused by actions done at the wrong time, or perhaps actions that are just inappropriate or unhelpful, like the monk's behavior. It set the stage perfectly for the core teaching.
Right. So, based on this whole situation, what was the main lesson the Buddha wanted to impart?
It's incredibly direct and, well, profound. He taught that anyone who intends to instruct or train other people must first train themselves, and train themselves really well.
Okay. You have to embody it yourself first. Makes sense.
It's the absolute foundation. The Buddha explained that it's only when someone is genuinely well-trained, disciplined in themselves, that they become truly capable of training others effectively.
He gave a reason why this self-training is so crucial.
He did. He specifically pointed out that the self, one's own self, is truly hard to train. That's the real challenge.
That resonates. It's often easier to tell others what to do than to do it ourselves. Was there a verse summarizing this?
Yes, he spoke a verse that really captures the essence. It goes, "If one should do as one instructs others, being well trained, one would indeed train others. For the self, it is said, is hard to train."
Okay, let's break that down a bit. If one should do as one instructs others.
That hits the nail on the head regarding Padhānikattissa, right? If you tell monks to do walking meditation in the first watch, you need to be doing it too. Live the instruction.
Got it. Then, being well-trained, one would indeed train others.
This links your effectiveness as a teacher directly to your own mastery. By developing the quality you're teaching within yourself, you gain the credibility and the actual skill to guide others properly.
Right. Your inner state enables your outer action. And the final line, for the self, it is said, is hard to train.
And that's the crux of it, isn't it? The commentary emphasizes this point. Our own ingrained habits, our laziness, distractions, ego, that's the really difficult training ground.
So the takeaway is crystal clear. The internal work has to come first. Train yourself. Achieve that well-trained state before, or at least while trying to guide others.
That's the prerequisite, according to this teaching. And the impact of the Buddha explaining all this on the monks who had been hindered.
Yes. What happened to the 500 monks after they heard this discourse?
It was quite remarkable. The source says that at the very end of this teaching, all 500 monks attained arahantship.
Wow. Full enlightenment. Just like that.
That's what the text states. It suggests that understanding this core principle, hearing this genuine teaching after the confusing experience, removed the final obstacles for them. The path became clear.
What a powerful narrative. It just throws that contrast into such sharp relief, the difference between saying the words and living the reality.
It really does. And that core insight, it's undeniable, isn't it? The real work of teaching or leading or influencing anyone, it genuinely starts with training yourself. Without that foundation,
It's just empty noise, like the monks realized.
yeah.
And that phrase, the self is hard to train. Boy, does that hit home.
It's the universal struggle, I think, for anyone trying to improve or guide.
So, for you listening, maybe reflect on this in your own context. Whether you're, a parent setting rules, a manager leading a team, a teacher, or even just managing your own goals. Where's the alignment between the standards you set for others or yourself and your actual actions?
Mm-hmm. And the power of getting that alignment right is clear from the story, the Buddha's words, the outcome for those monks. It shows that self-mastery isn't just a personal project. It fundamentally shapes your ability to genuinely help or inspire others effectively.
So here's something to maybe mull over. In what specific area of your life do you find that the self is hard to train? And what might shift if you really focused on that internal work first? How could that change your impact on others or even just on yourself?